Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and in today's video we are going to talk about what I think is the reason for something that most of you have either noticed already or are going to notice soon if you are flying to holidays in summer 2022 in Europe. Now, what I'm talking about, of course, is delays. And there are plenty of them. We hear it in the radio, we hear it in the news, we hear it everywhere. And in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit what I personally think is causing some of them and what I think could have been done better. Now, of course, I'm not totally unbiased in this one because as somebody working frontline in the aviation industry, I'm of course being exposed to those delays every day at the moment. So, let's start with air traffic control. Now, if you're sitting in the aircraft and your captain is making an announcement telling you, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking," you may be wondering why we're standing here on stand for about 10-15 minutes already and why we have not started moving. The reason for this is an air traffic control slot. Now, many captains are going to explain to you what a slot is, and it basically is a takeoff time that's given to you by air traffic control. And normally, let's say in a normal summer as in 2019, most slots are within on time to maybe half an hour delay. So that's what we normally get. But this year it's different. This year we are seeing slots 1 hour late, 2 hours late, 5 hours late. The longest that a colleague that I've spoken to has gotten by now is 6.5 hours late, which actually led to a flight cancellation because they were running out of their legal duty period. Now, why is that? Air traffic controller has one big problem at the moment. During the COVID crisis, the traffic levels have been so low that new air traffic controllers who were in training could not have been checked out on their positions because they simply didn't have the traffic levels that you need in order to conduct their final exam. So, if new controllers could not have been checked out, that means that in order for them to keep working and to keep controlling, and of course you need to keep in practice as an air traffic controller, just like you do as a pilot, with the only difference that as a pilot, you can simply go to a simulator to get current again. With an air traffic controller, it's not that easy. And of course, there are not that many simulators around. So they needed to keep controlling. And of course, in order to do that, when they are not checked out and don't have their final exams passed yet, that means that they will need an instructor along their side. And if the instructor has to be there for that same candidate for 2 years, then of course this instructor cannot train any new controller who will probably have been through his theory already. And the result is that for about 2 years' time, the air traffic control companies could not check out their controllers in training and therefore couldn't start the practical training with new controllers, while at the same time older controllers retired, and so they are facing a severe lack of staff at the moment. Also, if you are in Germany and you want to go to Spain, chances are you're going to fly either through the Rhine control sectors or through the Roms control sectors. Now, Roms control has just replaced parts of their radar equipment, which is now severely limiting the capacity of aircraft they can accept in their sector. And I don't know why you have to do this just in front of the summer holidays, but they did. And now the result is that most of the traffic that would normally have flown through their sector is being redirected through the Rhine control sector, so through southwestern Germany. And they already don't have sufficient controllers because of the issue I told you earlier on. So things are really breaking down there, and that's how you get slots in the region of several hours. But it's not just in the Rhine and Rom sector, it's also in many other sectors where ATC faces the same kind of problems. And just a couple of days ago, we were facing some major thunderstorms in Germany, Austria, Italy and over the Alps, and that just reduces capacity even further, leading to slots that are like 3, 4, 5 hours in the future. And now think about how airlines are planning their crews. So a typical airline would have an aircraft depart as early as possible in the morning to do a flight somewhere, come back. Maybe the same crew is going to do another 2 flights, so then the crew has done 4 flights. And then the late crew is taking over and again doing 4 flights. That makes 8 flights. Now imagine you have a single slot of 2 or 3 hours in it. Then the last flight is probably not going to happen because the destination airport will be in night curfew by the time that the crew actually gets there. And that is bad enough. But now imagine having 8 flights, or maybe 6 or 4 flights, depending on which airline you consider. You may have an airline that is going to do a flight, for example, to Greece or to northern Spain, like the Balearic Islands, in the morning, and then a longer flight to Egypt, Cyprus, or the Canary Islands in the afternoon, evening. But imagine all of that flights getting just about an hour of a slot delay. Then of course the last flight is going to be 4 hours late. And that is what we're seeing at the moment. That is what's happening. But it's not just that. It's more. During the COVID crisis, many companies, airports and airlines and any other service providers alike used the opportunity to severely cut down the salaries and the working conditions of their employees. And many employees have been laid off. Now, those who've been laid off have seen what the working conditions of the remaining people looked like, and they've turned their back towards aviation and started looking for something in different businesses. And now that they are needed again, they are not coming back. That is the problem, that especially the lower paying ranks, so for example security control, baggage loaders, pushback drivers, ramp agents, that they are facing. Basically all those ground handling companies who are doing jobs for which you don't need a high qualification. People just run away, and even now they don't seem to be learning, and the working conditions and salaries are still so low that they just don't find any new people, let alone having the capacity to train those new people. And that just aggravates the situation. Imagine you have the first wave departure in the morning and they don't have handling available for half an hour. That half an hour is going to go through the whole day, and there will be no opportunity to get that half an hour back. And then add all the other delays to it, and there you are. Another problem that many airlines are facing is a pilot shortage and a cabin crew shortage. If you are following the news around Europe, then you will notice that in many countries, airline pilots and cabin crew are going on strike these days. Now, why is that? That is mostly because airlines used the COVID crisis to reduce the salary and increase productivity of many of their pilots. So in most airlines it's been at least 20-25% decrease in the pay combined with an increase in productivity. So for example, working more days or working longer hours. Some airlines who had more restrictive flight duty limitations have now probably extended those limitations to the EASA limits. So that means that crew members might, for example, have to work 2 hours more while getting 20% less pay per day, of course. And all of that used to be possible in 2020. That's where airlines were in a position that they could actually dictate those contracts. But now, of course, things are turning. Right now, one of Europe's largest airlines, Ryanair, is actually already flying more flights than they did in 2019, while already having achieved the same load factor. And all of that while ticket prices are 10% higher, while inflation is 8%. So basically, now Ryanair is doing better than they did in 2019, before the COVID crisis. But all of that while, of course, at the same time the employees are working on reduced conditions. And that is something that is causing significant unrest among the employees, which is why you see so many strikes coming up these days. Another example here is Wizz Air. Now, some of you will know this video that the Wizz Air CEO has posted on, I believe, Twitter a few days, maybe weeks ago. And in Wizz Air, pilots are facing severe fatigue problems at the moment because of those lengthy delays. And the result is that they do what a professional pilot is going to do, and if you are fatigued, then you are not going to fly an airplane. There is no way that any professional pilot would take over responsibility for passengers and equipment when he is not feeling 100% fit. That is industry standard. That's been industry standard for many years. But the Wizz Air CEO has recently released a video on that mentioned social media platform where he basically said, and I can't quote this by heart, but it was along the following lines. Dear pilots, I understand that you are having hard times at the moment. Everybody's having hard times. All of us are working fatigued at the moment. And now I quote, please go the extra mile. Quote end. And in that situation, the CEO of one of the largest European airlines is asking his pilots to fly fatigued. And the European pilot body, ECA, has actually called that out to the oversight authorities, to EASA, to make sure that that airline is following European safety standards. Now imagine what kind of a situation Wizz Air has to be for their CEO to publish a video like that. Any airline should, without any problems, be able to foresee the public relations issues that they are going to face with a video like that, and still they do it. So that just gives us an insight into the difficulty of the situation for the staff working at the moment. Basically, you are working a totally unforeseeable roster. Your airline might have planned the next 5 days or the next 7 days in advance. And chances are that if you're working for an airline that is doing both holiday flights as well as city-to-city flights, so for example, on the same day you might go from your home base to Palma de Mallorca, then back, and then on to London and back to your home base, then chances are you are being planned at a duty time of maybe 10 hours to 11 hours. Now, if you have that 2-hour slot delay, then you exceed the 12 hours. And after that, you need to enter the so-called captain's discretion. Now, captain's discretion is something that has been created so that a crew can return to their home base in case of exceptional circumstances. So, for example, if you face a lengthy slot delay. And what that basically means is the captain has to assess all crew members to make sure that they are alert enough to do the flight. So he has to relate with all crew members, talk to them, make sure that they are awake and that they are able to operate. And once he's done that, and only when the captain is satisfied that the crew members are still awake and still alert to carry out their duties, then the captain can decide to extend the maximum flight duty period by up to 2 hours. So that means that from the default 12 hours, they can then be extended into 14 hours. But at the same time, this also increases the rest requirement after the duty. So by default, you need 12 hours of rest at your home base after your duty, or at least 10 hours if you're not in the home base and a hotel is provided by the airline. Now, most airlines these days, if they plan duties in the region of 10, 11 hours, that means that they are planning their crews with a rest time of, by average, maybe 12.5, 13 hours. Now imagine you have a 1-hour slot delay. If you land 1 hour later, and then you need 12 hours rest, then you will not be able to fly that flight in the next morning, because then you are what we call out of hours. So basically your rest time exceeds the departure time the next morning. In other words, the airline needs to call a standby crew to operate that flight and then shift you onto a later flight. But if you are being shifted onto a later flight, then chances are that you cannot fly what's been planned for you the next morning either. And of course the crew that has taken over your flight now, that you were originally supposed to do, might encounter a delay again, or is very likely to actually encounter a delay again, so then they can't do that flight either. And ultimately, airlines are short on crews at the moment because they used the COVID crisis to get rid of what they thought was excess staff cost. So many airlines laid off pilots who are now not coming back because they have already found another company that hired them. And you have pilots calling fatigued because of all those lengthy delays we're facing at the moment. So overall, this is getting you into a spiral. And at the moment, it is up to every single professional in the aviation industry to ensure that all the safety standards are met, and they are doing a very, very good job at it at this moment. It would be very easy to actually fall for it and maybe think, but I want to go home now, no matter what. I just want to go home. But at the moment, it's up to every single professional in the aviation industry to make sure that that's not happening. And they're doing a very good job at it. The result, however, is that at the moment, we have staff shortages everywhere, be it with the ground crews, be it with air traffic control, be it with the airlines themselves. And all of that is coming together. And the Airlines Operations Center are working very, very good at the moment to make sure that all the flights are still departing more or less on time. To the end of the days towards less, to the morning probably more. But that's what's happening at the moment, in my personal opinion. Now, that opinion is not based on the insights one might have as an airline's operation controller, and it is purely based on what I'm currently seeing happening, what I'm hearing from friends flying for other airlines, and what I hear from friends who are air traffic controllers, and of course what I'm hearing from colleagues. Hope you found this one interesting. If you think there's different reasons coming into play, then let me know in the comments below. I'm very eager to hear your opinions. Until then, thank you very much for joining, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.